Hello, everybody. Good day to you all. Thank you so much for joining us today for yet another webinar. We'll be discussing electric powered equipment. Today, our speakers will highlight the growth opportunities for electric vehicles in the construction and agricultural industry. My name is Simbiat Yusuf. I am the Member Relations Manager at Ford. We have a great moderator today, Robert Wallace. He's the Executive Director at WyEast Resource Conservation and Development. Um, we have just an amazing conversation happening. I'm really excited about this topic. um, Attendees, we ask that you please be sure to submit all of your questions through the attendee chat. We will get through them during the Q&A portion of our webinar today, which is going to be after all of our presenters are done presenting. We will also be sharing the webinar recording as well as the speaker's presentation deck after the webinar today with some additional resources and any announcements and updates from the Ford team. And as we speak of announcements and updates from Ford, who are we? Who's Ford? If you're new, Ford, we are on a mission to electrify transportation. We bring people together to create solutions that reduce pollution and barrier to access for transportation. We are working in the focus areas of access to electric cars, access to charging, policy advocacy, partnerships, and developing the future. We can't only think of now, we have to think about the future 20 years from now and 10 years from now. If you want to learn more information about Ford, what we do, reports, working with us, you can find that information on our website at fourthmobility.org. And we always want to take the opportunity to thank our members and sponsors for making our webinars and programs at Ford happen. We want to say thank you to these select members. And if you have any questions about membership or you're interested in sponsoring our webinars, we have 2 left for this season. We are revving up and planning for the next season. So if you want to talk to us about sponsorship opportunity or becoming a member to support Ford, you can reach out to me. My email is on screen, or you can go on our website, fourthmobility.org, to have more information. And you want to join the Ford team? Yes, you do. We have some position currently open. We have the program associate, program manager, as well as a senior manager for business development. If you're interested or anyone in your network is interested in these positions, we would be sharing the information in our webinar recap, and we will follow up with more information about that. And I am hoping with just over a month left to the Roadmap Conference, y'all are registered. Make sure you're registered today so you can save with early adopter rates. The program is live, so if you want a sneak peek or if you want to see what's going to happen, who's going to be speaking, and what types of conversations we will be having at the Roadmap Conference, you can go on the website at roadmap4.org. We also have a lot of interesting networking opportunities for everyone. So it's going to be a blast. We look forward to welcoming everyone back to Portland after being virtual for the past 2 years. And now I will pass it along to Robert, our moderator, to introduce our speakers and get us ready for the panel. Robert?
Well, hey, good morning, everybody. Hey, I'm Robert Wallace. I'm with WyEast RC&D, Resource Conservation and Development. I'm based out of the Dalles, Oregon. And kind of a brief introduction for myself. I work a lot with the rural electric cooperatives and electric utilities throughout the Pacific Northwest. A lot of my work is with energy efficiency projects. We've been working together with Forth on this electric tractor rural electrification project for about 3 years now. A few other project members, nonprofits. There's 4 of us that are involved with this project. Forth, WyEast, RC&D, Bonneville Environmental Foundation, and Sustainable Northwest. And so just a quick story, kind of talking about electric equipment. And this is really, off-road electric equipment. And so we received our first tractor from Solectrac back in January of 2021. It showed up about 6:30 in the evening, and it was raining and dark out. And the delivery driver untarped the tractor and said, "Okay, it's ready to be unloaded. And so I hopped on it and went to start it, and I wasn't sure if it was idling or not because it had no noise. And so that was my first experience with actually operating an electric powered piece of equipment. Since then, we've brought in three more electric tractors here to Oregon that we're testing with many other pieces of equipment on the way. Um, we're looking at everything from electric skid steers, electric mini excavators, tractors, electric pickup trucks, and so more to come on that. But hey, today's conversation is with we've got three different speakers joining us as far as the panel, and I'd go ahead and ask our speakers, go ahead and turn your cameras on if you would, please. And so, first of all, I'd like to introduce Brad Wham. Brad's a sales manager for a company called Orange EV, and they make an electric powered terminal truck that's used a lot in the freight and warehouse industry. You'd see these a toter truck, you might call them, moving the trailers around in the yards of the freight terminals. Next, we have Steve Heckeroth. Steve's the founder and chief innovation officer and chairman of the board with Solectrac out of Santa Rosa, California. And then we have Alene Walkington, the program manager. She runs the EnergyRight solutions for industrial and business, and she's with the Tennessee Valley Authority. So I thought thank you all for joining us here this morning on the West Coast. I know it's afternoon for some of you in other parts of the country. I thought maybe as a little icebreaker question, we would start and just ask a simple question as far as how did you get into the electric transportation industry? And so, Brad, if you wouldn't mind maybe kicking off with that question.
Sure. Thanks, Robert. I got into the electric vehicle industry by following the company that I currently work for. It's mission driven, really wanting to have an impact. What can we do to impact global warming? And our company lives that mission, knowing that not everyone cares about global warming as much as others. But if we build a truck and make it driver friendly and provide the best uptime at the lowest cost, even those that don't have global warming at the priority list on top, we'll change the world one truck at a time. So really, really proud to be part of Orange EV and the family and supporting that mission.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, thank you, Brad. How about you, Steve? How did you get into the electric
Well,
equipment industry?
I was brought up in Los Angeles in the 50s when the smog was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. But breathing that stuff before emissions controls ruined my lungs pretty much. And by the time I got to college, I was convinced that I wanted to find alternatives to burning fossil fuel. And the very first Earth Day, that's what I dedicated my life to. And been working on it ever since, first in architecture, building solar homes. And then when the zero emission mandate came out in California, I started building electric vehicles. So, and then I figured tractors were the best electric vehicle because weight is an asset in a tractor, where in a car, it's a big problem.
Yeah, well, thank you, Steve. Alene, how about you? How did you get into the electric equipment industry?
I started a little bit backwards. I knew that TVA was a valued employer in my area, and so I just kept looking for a career with TVA. And I started in EnergyRight Solutions when that organization began, and then I sort of transitioned into the business and industry organization segment of it. And the thing that hooked me into this to where I really enjoy it is the technology. Technology is always evolving, and so there's always something new and variety and fun and cool. And so the first two super cool moments of my career with TVA was when they were talking about motors being applied in irrigation systems. And so if you're flying in the airplane and you look down and you see a lot of circles, well, they're not using a motor on their variable frequency drive to get those corners. So you're maximizing productivity. The other one was using LED lighting in chicken farms. And LED can provide cool light at the end of the chicken stage, and then also warm light in the beginning to actually promote growth. And so that's kind of, being from Tennessee, I was like, oh, wow. And so very often I learn fun facts about everything. And so I work with a great group of engineers and just a smart group. And so it's always challenging, fun, and exciting.
Yeah. So they hooked you in, it sounds like.
Yeah, they did. They hooked me.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, let's go ahead and get started with our discussion today. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brad and have you talk to us about Orange EV. And so, and then when Brad's done, we'll move forward to Steve with Solectrac. And then Alene will finish us up and talk about some of the programs she's working on there with the Tennessee Valley Authority. So, Brad, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Robert. So I put together a presentation that we presented, or I presented at TMC earlier in March of this year. And really, it's what's unique about energy metrics for EV terminal tractors specifically, and what are the key drivers. So just an overview of Orange EV before we get into the discussion. We're a pure play EV company. We focus 100% on terminal tractors. And Robert had alluded to, it's the asset that companies use to move trailers of raw product into a manufacturing plant or a DC, or just moving trailers around the yard and not really making deliveries in town type scenario. And so we nearly have, we've got over now 430 trucks deployed across 120 plus fleets in North America, Canada, and then in the Caribbean. Where our fleets are averaging uptimes of 98 to 99% on all of those trucks deployments. And the value there is, with the diesel, you've got a lot of complexity of engine, transmission, radiator, PTO, where our solution is very simple. We don't have that complexity engineered into our trucks, and so our customers are able to use our trucks more. They're able to enjoy that uptime to get utilization, which then reduces their carbon footprint. And then we're also seeing a lower total cost of ownership. And the industry's the space has changed over the last 3 years to incentives. We were very heavily incentive-based purchases in our first 4 years in operation. And now we have customers that are buying our trucks without any incentives whatsoever because the return on investment is there. And we also have experience working with infrastructure constraints of an operation. And then, we're also we're a U.S.-based company. We have a factory in Kansas City, and we're delivering best-in-class truck deliveries from a purchase order to a truck being delivered. A new truck is 90 days with the charging cabinet. So customers are actually able to deploy the solution to help them with operationally, but also meet their sustainability goals. Why a yard tractor? There's no range anxiety. So the chemistry in our batteries are designed to support, a truck that doesn't need to go 60 miles an hour down the highway for 30 miles or 150 miles. We have regenerative braking, which does two things. One, it puts energy back into the battery cells throughout shifts to extend the shift. And then also it provides a 50% shorter stopping distance from a safety standpoint, provides drivers, a guy or girl can now use a single pedal versus a two pedal approach. And that's really important. And then whenever you're looking at that operation, there's just immense amount of idle time. And so by using an electric vehicle, you're burning, let's say 8 kilowatts an hour or 7 kilowatts an hour. So maybe that's 70 cents an hour versus a diesel that's going to burn 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons. So, with the prices today, it's a pretty quick return on investment. And then it's really just replacing one of the most inefficient and highest downtime assets in a fleet. And so the diesel emissions constraints really wasn't thought of in the terminal tractors, so it doesn't work very well there. And then we just recently, NACFE announced that the terminal tractor is one of the best, if not the best, vehicles for electrification. We see a lot of growth from ACT research that 50% of the fleets will be converted to EV yard tractors by 2024. So, how do you measure those metrics of EV efficiency? You've got kilowatts per hour, you've got state of charge, and then how do you do your reductions? How do you capture that in an asset that typically doesn't have the telematics and doesn't have the technology or the technology to measure that? With us, we have telematics. So we're the first company, the only company that I know of right now that provides telematics with every truck that we built for our customers to be able to measure those calculations, but also for us to monitor and make sure everything's in parameters. But so with the ability to have the telematics, we provide our customers with a scorecard on a monthly basis that then says, if you used a diesel in this same application, here's how much diesel you saved, you would have used, here's your maintenance cost, but then also you're able to then see what your CO2 impact is so that you can have an empirical data, meaningful reporting system on how you're meeting your ESGs. And so it's a nice solution so that a customer can then also report on their sustainability. Here's some typical usage of energy consumption in different applications. And so you can see that we're operating in a myriad of operations from low speed, high speed, low weight, long travel. And you can see the energy consumption per hour and kilowatts. And then, on a single charge, what our trucks can do without being charged. Now, we do take and educate our customers on opportunity charging throughout the shift. But if you were just to use the truck without just on a single 100% charge, you can get dramatic hours to support your operation to alleviate anxiety of energy. Top factors that drive the consumption of kilowatts per hour. So in this space, you're not looking at miles. You're looking at key-on hours and how much energy. So how often you're moving, how fast, how far, the grade, those type of things play a critical part as you spec out a truck to support your operation. We talked about temperature, rolling resistance. So temperature in a battery solution, cold is the threat, if you will. So with our engineering, cold's never an issue because our trucks automatically turn on heating elements to protect those batteries, and we haven't lost a battery in our 10 years, and across those 400 deployments, never had to replace a battery or lose a battery in that sense. Whenever you're looking at, what should you do from a standpoint, if you want to look at terminal tractors in your application, our advice is don't confirm your site and duty cycle to the truck, but confirm, the truck to your site and duty cycle. And so we do that. We recommend choosing an OEM that's demonstrated that long-term success in similar operations. Spec the right battery pack size. So we have multiple battery pack size to support the operation, but then also provide the greatest return on investment for our customers. And then, the right charger and correct charging speed. And we guide our customers on where to place those, because again, you want it to be accessible for whenever a driver takes a break or a lunch break, or they're just sitting, so they can take advantage of opportunity charging. And then some special considerations is, no site power availability. So, you have to look to make sure the infrastructure is there. Our solution, we operate on low voltage. So we operate at 120 DC. And so we're a much safer solution as you look to electrify your Class 8 fleet. All other OEMs to date are high voltage. And so it has safety concerns, but also infrastructure considerations that we don't typically run into because we're low voltage. And then high energy consumption, don't fear the high numbers, because the more you use the truck, the faster the return on investment is, and also the cleaner it's going to be from a standpoint of reducing that carbon emissions of your operation. And that's an overview. Hopefully, Robert, I wasn't over the 10 minutes there.
No, you did. You did great. Thanks, Brad, for that information and everything. And these are looks to be a very a great solution for that type of application and stuff. We're going to go ahead and move forward and get Steve here. Steve Heckeroth with Solectrac. And Steve's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the tractors they're developing there in California. I would like to mention to the attendees, if you guys have questions and stuff, go ahead and populate the chat there with them, and we'll do some Q&A after we're done with the presentations here. So, Steve, the floor is all yours. So tell us about Solectrac.
All right. Well, who we are, we're a Northern California-based company. I've been building electric tractors for 30 years now, and it's only recently that people have heard about electric tractors. So we're still trying to get the word out there. It's amazing to me that that it not only solves a lot of environmental problems, but it actually has maximum torque at 0 RPM, and the weight is an asset. You'll see in the next slide, there's a whole list of why electric tractors: battery weights and assets, energy efficient, quiet, improved health and safety, lower operating costs, less maintenance, instant torque, no idling. Exchangeable battery packs is one of our patents, and regenerative braking, as Brad mentioned too. So I was building electric Porsche Spyders first in the early 90s. And I was putting about half a ton of batteries in these nice little sports cars. And I thought, this is crazy. And then I went to the county fair and saw this tractor with this big cement weight on the back. And I said, well, tractors should make ideal electric vehicles because they require weight for traction. They actually, you can go out and buy weights to put on the front bumper and different places to give the tractor the perfect balance and traction. Efficiency is another huge issue, as Brad was pointing out. You don't have to idle, so that's a huge gain. But internal combustion engine uses 62% of the energy just as wasted as heat. So right off the bat, you've lost the majority of what you could use as work. It's just gone away as heat. That's why you have a big radiator and everything. Whereas an electric motor is like over 90% efficient, and there's very little heat loss. There's also a lot of mechanical losses in the hydrostatic transmissions that they use, and there's very little loss in the geared transmissions. That's a direct link between the electric motor and the wheels. And then there's an additional gain in electrics, which is regenerative braking, or when you slow down, you add that energy back into the battery. It's kind of like having a little spigot that every time you stepped on the brakes, a little more gas would go into your gas tank. Of course, that doesn't happen, but in electric, it does. Quiet operations is a huge thing. I know my hearing is damaged, and most people who've been around loud equipment, they have hearing damage because the decibel rating for diesel tractors is up to about 95 to 100 decibels, which is like a jet engine. And our electric tractors were the quietest tractors ever tested by the tractor testing lab in Nebraska. It's about 65 decibels. So it's right in the speaking range. You also aren't exposed to the pollution that, diesel particularly has particulate pollution that gets in your lungs and can cause a lot of health issues. And of course, we're all aware of, with the fires and the floods and the hurricanes, we're all aware of the impact of climate change. And diesel tractor over a 30 horsepower diesel over 15 years produces about 90 tons of CO2 emissions. If you charge off the grid, you have about only 9 tons produced by the grid for charging an electric tractor. And if you go to solar, it's less than 1 ton to make the solar panels, and they last at least 25 years. So the reduction is very, very significant in CO2 emissions. The cost of operation is also a big factor, and that's increasing now. Electricity is staying about the same price, where diesel is going up pretty fast. So even on this chart, the difference is greater now because diesel's gone from $4 a gallon to, here in California, it's close to $6 a gallon. So it's almost 10 times less costly to charge than to fill up the tank. So here's just an outline. You can go through this. The difference between the cost of maintenance is huge, pretty dramatic. There's 400 moving parts in a diesel engine, and there's only one moving part in an electric motor. So you hardly ever replace an electric motor, but you're constantly replacing and doing maintenance on diesel engines. So the cost over a 15-year lifetime is really makes the electric much cheaper over time. Electric motors have instant torque, have maximum torque at 0 RPM. So that's compared to diesel engines, which don't come up to maximum torque till 2 or 3,000 RPM. And in a tractor pull, I can just pull them away like there's nothing behind me, because they can't get up to torque by the time I'm at maximum torque and pulling. And that's what tractors are all about, is torque. So it's really, you don't have to talk about the environmental things. Once somebody gets on an electric tractor and they see the power that it has, the instant power, they go, wow, this is really a lot better than diesel. They don't idle, which Brad went over pretty good. That is an amazing thing. Every time you get off a tractor, like in harvest, you're only on the tractor for a couple seconds to move it forward. And then the rest of the time they leave it idling while people are loading the bins. And with electric, you only use power during that 10 seconds. With diesel, it's idling all the time, using power and creating pollution and noise. Our exchangeable battery packs help with people's range anxiety. And they also act to balance the weight of an implement on the rear or a loader on the front. So When you've got a loader on the front, you can put an exchangeable battery pack. If that's the main thing you're doing, you can put that on the back. If you've got a bit heavy implement on the back, you can mount the exchangeable pack on the front. So it helps with balancing the weight, and it also adds significantly to runtime. If you have several exchangeable packs, you can have continuous runtime. So regenerative braking is another thing Brad talked about, and it just saves your brakes. In electric cars, you hardly ever have to replace the brakes. Here's our two models. We have the E25 for the hobby farmer and the E70 for vineyards. And we are out, we've got quite a few tractors out in the field. Our first one went to Kokua, Hawai'i Foundation. They're a teaching farm. Jack Johnson and his wife Kim operate it. And then Winfield Farm is a hog farm that really appreciates the tractor. And LA Compost is totally upgraded their operation. They were using shovels and pitchforks, and now they have a quiet, clean tractor to move compost around. This is a quote from one of our customers: amazingly quiet, and it's perfect for the health and safety of the workers. The incentive programs we'll talk about later, I think, in the question and answer session, but there are some great incentives. So thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Appreciate the presentation there and good information. And I know we've got some questions. We'll just save those for right now, and then we'll go through those questions in the Q&A. So next
Sounds
we have
good.
Alene. Yeah, next we have Alene Walkington, and Alene is a program manager for EnergyRight. Works with the Tennessee Valley Authority, and Alene, you work with a lot of the energy efficiency and electrification incentive programs there, and so let's go ahead and turn that over to you, and let's hear what kind of work you've been up to.
Thank you, Robert. So I'm excited to be here. I hate public speaking, but I am very excited about the topic. So I think I covered a little bit about Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. We are a public power model, and we partner with 153 individual local power companies in the Southeast, covering 7 states and about 80,000 square area miles. And we have proudly serve about 10 million customers. And so my group, EnergyRight, started back in 2009, and that's when TVA started the incentive program for energy efficiency. But TVA also has a mission we call 3Es, where we energy, environment, and economic development. And so I'm proud to be in EnergyRight because our organization supports these 3 missions as well. Reducing costs, we do that with incentives. We promote technologies with clean, emission-free resources type of equipment. And also by our incentives, we help businesses use energy wisely, which can be economic growth. And we also support a contractor network to provide our products and services to end-use customers. And so EnergyRight is our organization name, and we call them an EnergyRight program. And so our focus is providing energy-saving advice through trusted contractors, and we partner with the local power companies to transform lives in the communities with innovative, industry-leading energy solutions. And so the EnergyRight programs, like Robert said, were energy efficiency, but since then it's kind of expanded to electrification, which is non-road electric vehicles, and I'm going to talk to you about forklifts. But we also have an electric vehicle segment, demand response, a group focused on federal programming, That would be your Army bases, post offices, VA hospitals, and then the energy efficiency initiatives that so many people are familiar with, lighting programs. And so I really get excited about forklifts because over the years, it has been able to transform and adapt with every shift of focus that EnergyRight has had. So for instance, when we started implementing electric forklifts into the organization, we had a focus of carbon reduction. And then we went to, and then that was such a success, we folded and continued to keep electric forklifts in with our energy efficiency program for several years. And then when we shifted from energy efficiency, because the industry had understood and had a certain awareness about energy efficiency, we shifted to electrification. And that was, we did probably our largest push to convince customers to convert from gas to electric forklifts. And today we had a large non-road EV offering, which also included a lot of equipment for airports that is now minimized just to focus more on the forklift. And so I'd like to share an example of a project highlight. I chose this project because the incentive was $14,000, but the overall equipment cost $700,000 for them to get these 7 automated forklifts. So our incentive, I believe Brad had said earlier that incentives weren't really, his product was innovative enough that it didn't need incentives, but it is beneficial. And so what this is an electric forklift. And what happened with this particular company was they had added a production line. However, so they were producing more, but they couldn't get the product from the product line to shipping. And so they got these automated forklifts, and they were able to continue to meet that productivity and get it out the door. And so I'm going to kind of go over some of the basics for electric forklifts. I know today we're talking about non-road EV electric vehicles for agricultural and new construction. And we have about 4% of our projects go towards grocery store, farmers market. We did expand into indoor ag, but that hasn't had much of an uptake. Also, with new construction on the residential side, they're working to pre-wire homes. So they'll be, the garage will be prepared with electric vehicle level 2 charging stations. So they work just like industrial internal combustion engines. They use batteries instead of propane and diesel. And there's 5 classes. One is a counterbalance rider truck. It has a person sitting on it, and it has a lift capacity from 3,000 to 20,000 pounds. Sometimes could even be 40,000 pounds. And the narrow aisle forklift, which is here. So I have 3 pictures of forklifts. Class 1 is on the left, Class 2 is in the middle, and Class 3 is on the right. We currently incentivize Class 1 and 2, converting an industrial internal combustion into Class 1 or Class 2. And typically, Class 1 is a real good replacement for Class 4. The benefits of electric, there's a lot of benefits for electric. So if you put them into categories, there's capital benefits, lower emissions, better working environment, and reduced operating costs. So a lot of these benefits are shared across the technologies that the rest of the speakers are talking about. And so capital benefits, of course, utility incentives can help reduce the cost. Another thing is that a couple of the speakers have mentioned how quiet they are. Well, along with that quietness, there's less vibrations, and so that's better on your employees' health. It also lower emissions. It's a healthier environment. And sometimes because you have the electric forklift, you can change your ventilation requirements, and that can be also a money-saving opportunity. What was another benefit that I really liked? So here's another project that I wanted to highlight. This project, this company actually leased the equipment for a warehouse. They leased 11 forklifts, and it was a warehouse. But what they were excited about was that they didn't have to use the gas power, but what that meant was they didn't have to store it as well. So we think about it in use, but there also was the demands of keeping it on site and using it in that way. So I find that there's a lot of barriers to entry. I know we give some incentive money, but as you could tell, it's a small amount. So a lot of times with electric forklifts, there's a higher capital cost to enter, and that's because you're not only buying the electric forklift, but you also have to do maybe purchase an extra battery, set aside some workspace in the warehouse for it. Some assumptions are that the batteries won't last the full shift. They're unsafe in wet weather. They won't be strong enough. And so another barrier is that you have to implement additional training. And additional training because the forklift is quiet. So now you have to make sure that your signs are up adequate. Your operator is trained to make sure that aisles are closed so he doesn't sneak up on someone. And then also maintenance. Sometimes they think maintenance free. It is reduced maintenance because there's less moving parts. And then infrastructure. In the old days, we had to swap a lot of batteries. There was a requirement for the additional room, which sometimes still is needed. Current workarounds. So what we're kind of finding out is that the supply chain, that's still a big issue. Forklift lead times can be 40 to 60 weeks. We're seeing some workarounds because people are leasing equipment and they just extend their lease, or they will get a forklift off the shelf instead of the actual custom forklift or forklift with particular feature that they wanted. And then also, a lot of people are just waiting or continuing to use their internal combustion forklift and not switching to electric when they want to. And so this is just my final slide. I've included the classes and the kilowatt hour per unit that are associated with that. The engineers did a lot of math behind that. Some of the things for you to consider when you go to get an incentive. These might be some of the items that the utility will need from you. And then also there's additional non-road EV equipment that we used to incentivize that's still of large value. So thank you very much. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alene. Appreciate that. All good information. And it's interesting to see three different types of equipment and how the conversion over from traditionally diesel or propane powered to electric and how those are working and stuff. Now, forklifts have been around electric forklifts, I should say, have been around for several years. Electric golf carts, those types of things. But with all this technology, definitely see more people moving to that electric powered unit. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask all the panelists, speakers, go ahead and turn your cameras back on and kind of go through some different Q&A. I've got a couple. We'll start off here, kind of directed more towards the electric tractor, and so I'm gonna focus those on you, Steve. And so maybe just kind of give us a kind of a quick response here. One of the first questions we had came in from Dan Rogers, and he was asking about building implements for additional storage to extend the working time of the tractor implement combo. And so I know you guys at Solectrac have looked at possibly powering some of the implements from the tractor, but if you looked at, putting a battery pack on, let's say a mower, that would then focus on the energy for that mower. Where are you guys at? What are you guys looking at there with the implements?
Well, I put a motor on a mower in 95, so I've been doing it a long time. It's important that we be able to provide a tractor that people can use their existing implements on, but because they've already got them and it would be, a wait, they'd have to turn them in or scrap them. But at the same time, the efficiency of using electric motors instead of hydraulics and PTOs is pretty significant. In the case of hydraulics, we use a linear actuator that is about 10 to 20 times more efficient on some of our tractors and for lifting. And we've put motors on mowers, for instance, and that can make them 2 to 3 times more efficient by having the motor mounted directly on the implement instead of running through the PTO. So yes, we are definitely moving in that direction, but we also want to make sure that people don't get an electric tractor because they can't use their old implements. So we're moving cautiously, but we're going ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Steve. I know that, kind of a lot of the questions oftentimes about the electric powered equipment is how long will they run on a charge and stuff. And I just wanted to clarify, this discussion, all these units here are really battery electric powered pieces of equipment that we're looking at. So let's talk a little bit about charging and kind of what's needed on site for charging. And so I'm gonna have Brad, maybe you start here. When you're looking at bringing one of your orange EV units into a warehouse, what are you guys looking as far as adding charging infrastructure for these trucks?
That's a great question, Robert. So typically, the most efficient infrastructure, and it's the most common infrastructure across the U.S., is 483 phase. So as long as a facility has 483 phase, that opens up the myriad of just about any charging cabinet out in the market. Specifically for us, since we're a lower voltage 120 DC, our typical cabinet that 90% of our customers operate on successfully requires 483 phase with a 60 amp breaker. And then that charging cabinet itself is only drawing 22 kilowatts of energy an hour back into the truck. And so that provides in a typical operation for every hour the truck's charged, it puts 3 hours of work that it can do back in. And so we can also operate at 240 and 208. Your efficiency drops, and then your charge rate drops too. But it's really taking a look at the existing infrastructure, because as companies start to look at electrifying their Class 8 fleets, the over-the-road, the delivery is going to be high voltage. So, you might need 180 kilowatt be able to pull, and that may not work on their existing infrastructure. So it's a much larger project and scope, and you're talking very expensive. And so we're fortunate that with our solution, we more times than not, we can deploy our trucks without having the customer have a large infrastructure upgrade. But it's out there. from a standpoint of what's needed in the infrastructure standpoint for classic trucks.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. How about Alene? When you're working with your customers and they're trying to make a decision whether to bring electric powered forklifts into the factory or warehouse or operation, uh, how big of a deal is it for the on-site charging infrastructure?
I don't know all the technical things to that, but that is one of the barriers to entry, because a lot of times people don't necessarily thoroughly think about or consider their needs. They'll think that they want to do a one-for-one replacement, or they'll either under or over. A lot of our forklifts go in the industrial section. 78% of our projects are for industrial, shift 1, shift 2, shift 3. And so it is critical that our trade allies properly scope the work to make sure that they have what they need.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And Steve, how about you on the electric tractors? How are we charging these tractors on farms?
Well, you don't park a tractor in a parking lot, so you usually park it in a barn, and almost all barns have welders because farmers are pretty resourceful people, and they build their own stuff a lot. So a welding plug is an ideal charging plug for the tractor. So that's what we recommend is just using what the infrastructure that you have in the barn. Or in a lot of cases on the vineyards, they put up solar arrays, and you can charge the tractor directly off a solar array if you have a charge controller that will work with the lithium batteries. So charging either from solar when they're available, or charging in the barn or the shop on the farm.
Okay. With just a standard 220 outlet plug for the tractors?
Yeah, we call it's a welding plug. It's either 220 30 amp or 220 50 amp.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We've got just a few minutes left here for Q&A. I'd like to talk about incentives real quick, and I'm going to start with Alene. For the Tennessee Valley Authority, as far as offering incentives to convert to electric forklifts with your guys' program. So what's kind of some of the basis for TVA, and why are they wanting to help folks get some of this electric powered equipment?
Well, one, it's our product to sell, but also we want our customers to use our product efficiently and correctly. And so if they can manage that and we can help them do better, then they can do other things more better. I know I'm in the Southeast, and my programs are active in 153 utilities, and so there's some standardization in that if we offer $1,000 for a lease or $2,000 for that, there's opportunities to find out about incentives by reaching out to your local utility. There's also aggregators that help implement incentives. They take a fee per application. They practically have a database of all utilities and what offerings they have. And then also there's some research companies that band utilities together. For instance, sometimes in that research piece, it'll get other utilities interested in it, and then they'll see how the incentive can help push that. But it just makes a quality of life better for the businesses and industries in the Valley. Quieter, and there's a lot of non-energy benefits that's in the safety. It's quieter, less vibration, cheaper maintenance, that type of thing.
Okay. All right. How about you, Brad? What are you seeing for incentives out there when you're talking with your customers?
So, Robert, there's several incentives that go on an annual basis. One is the DARA, Diesel Emission Reduction Act. That one that's once a year, and it encompasses every state, and so you can move assets around. It's a rather longer incentive program, but it allows for every state to participate, and then you get into more state or regional incentives. California has led the nation in incentives to support the global warming and carbon footprint, so that they do a nice job, and we see a lot of states copying their type of incentives, and so you've got local incentive teams that use old era money and old VW money to create programs to support the tractor in the field, the forklifts, the yard tractors. And so we've got a department in our company that's all they do is they scour on a daily basis of any grant that's open, and then we will understand what that grant means, and then give a Reader's Digest to our prospects and customers so they understand, here's the dollars, and then here are all the requirements and reporting so that they can and the measurements and the what the asset needs to look like. So we're seeing that the pot of money is potentially increasing, but with the focus now on EV and alternative fuel sources versus diesel, there's more hands in the kitty. And so what we used to see in the last 4 years, our customers, if they made a incentive grant application, 90% of the time they got that grant. We're starting to see that to diminish now, because you've got other assets that, the over-the-road trucks, the delivery trucks in our space. Just more people are getting the grants or applying to the grants. So we're seeing that shrink, but they're still out there.
Okay. And Steve, 30 seconds or less. What do you got?
30 seconds. Well, as Brad said, that California is the leader. We had the zero emission mandate back in 1990 that sort of led the way. There was 10 other states that adopted the programs in California. We've had the Carl Moyer program, which pays for like industrial equipment replacement of diesel pumps with electric pumps. And now we've got the farmer program, which pays 80% of the costs of replacing old diesel tractors with less polluting, either new diesel or hopefully now all electric.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I think we're at time for the Q&A. So I just want to thank Brad, Steve, and Alene. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for all the attendees and stuff. I know there's some questions in the Q&A that didn't get answered, and we will make sure to forward those to the appropriate folks and get you guys answers to your questions. So with that, I will turn it back over. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Alene, for a great discussion. Attendees, you'll see the contact info for our panelists today. We will be sending a webinar recap that will have more information on any follow-ups. We do have one quick final poll question for you all quickly on how informative did you find this webinar. We want to make sure that our content is as informative, and we want to make sure we're bringing quality information to you all. So as you all answer that, we want to thank you all for joining us today for yet another webinar. And today we discussed electric powered equipment. I'm going to be closing the poll now. Thank you. We hope you can join us in 2 weeks for our next webinar, Building Resiliency with Vehicle to Grid in Residential Homes. Our speakers will discuss how electric vehicles can interact with buildings to become a reliant power source for power outages. So if you can join us on Tuesday, May 24th for that and more information. And with that, I am going to close off our panel. And again, I will remind you all, register for the Roadmap Conference to continue discussions like this. I believe we do have a tractor panel on the agenda, so make sure you tune in for that. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye for now.